Hi, I'm Vooght, author of DMT, Deities, Myth and Tryptamines. The Philosophers Stoned. The sacred and so-called Philosopher's Stone, Stone of Projection or Stone of the Wise, which is revered throughout the much famed yet secretive Freemason fraternity, is certainly not just an alchemical axiom whereby the initiate is bestowed with knowledge of how to transform base metals into that of gold. If the quest for accumulated gold was indeed the nugget of wisdom or understanding quested by master masons, I'd certainly question the underlying importance of said society. Moreover, it would appear not that the lead be worked into gold in the material sense of this ancient analogy. Instead, the dulled or lead-like mind of the said seeker or alchemist may indeed learn to recognize the enlightening properties of an extracted crystalline stone with the capabilities of transcending one's conscious experience into that of gold. Researcher, writer and master mason P.D. Newman's Alchemically Stoned, the Psychedelic Secret of Freemasonry, doesn't merely hint at this being the case for said society's temple builders, he unequivocally blows the doors off the perception of the aforementioned notion of transforming base metals into gold, for a far more significant and transcendental transformation altogether. The transformation, or indeed biblical transfiguration, of one's psycho-spiritual self. For Newman reveals, the principal goal of the alchemists was the production of the lapis philosophorum, or philosopher's stone, the stone of the wise, from the secret prima materia, or primal matter. As the alchemical axiom states, the lapis is made not of stone, not of bone, not of metal. That is to say, it comes not from the mineral kingdom, not from the animal kingdom. So therefore it must be deduced that this stone is only to be found in the vegetable kingdom, namely, within the Acacia, Freemasonry's prima materia. Once alchemically extracted, free-base DMT is described as a crystal or stone. The process also requires the prima materia or Acacia to be submerged in a liquid before it's essentially raised, a process described in context with the original Assyrian mythology, whereby Osiris, concealed within a wooden casket of Acacia, is tossed into the river Nile before being metaphorically raised from the dead. The DMT experience is often likened to a mini-death, or loss of ego, whereby the traveller would often report on the feelings or sense of dying before being physically detached from one's being and thus propelled into an infinite void of universal understanding. This hyperdimensional space or astral plane we find is littered with indescribable hypervivid geometry which would appear to be a carnival of information fundamental to the mechanics of the cosmos. Intelligent entities who appear familiar beyond rational belief reassure you of your purpose and existence before DMT in your brain returns to normal levels once again. The overwhelming rush of spiritual emancipation thereafter may also be likened to the feeling of being born again new, or resurrected one might say. Yet Newman continues. Indeed, the alchemists purport that the Stone of the Wise has the power to provide its possessor with the knowledge of his very own mortal soul, hence also being called the Stone of Projection. For the soul of its possessor is the very thing that appears to be projected upon the stone's application. Liberated from its bodily frame, the stone's projected soul is free to roam the so-called astral plane, loosed from the limitations of its corporal container, a concept which has come to be known as an out-of-body experience, or OBE. Rather remarkably, what is often termed as a DMT breakthrough experience appears to inexplicably launch one's psycho-spiritual self into an impossibly complex and frighteningly familiar plane of existence alongside angels, elves, and alien insects. Newman goes on to cite Philippa Fox's The Masonic Magician, which dictates that the Masonic initiation of Count Cagliostro's Egyptian rite ritual witnessed the consumption of an ayahuasca-like red liquor containing said prima materia. The candidate shall drink, raising his spirit, and the acacia is the primal matter. It is thus that you may bring about the consummation of the marriage of the sun and the moon, and that you shall obtain the perfect projection. Perfect projection of what precisely? One's soul or spirit? Maybe. Intriguingly, however, lesser significant doses of vaporized freebase DMT describe more of a threshold experience whereby the unassuming participant appears to become kind of privy to witness the intense amplification of their angel-like psycho-spiritual projection into the ether of everyday waking reality. The eloquently documented yet unsanctioned experiments conducted by a friend and fellow researcher, Dick Kahn, author of DMT and My Occult Mind, reports on such incomprehensible manifestations of an otherwise hidden self. During a typified transcription of this interdimensional threshold experience, Kahn coolly confides, "I sat up and made 3 vaporous inhalations. Each attempt produced surprisingly voluminous amounts of vapor, which was duly vacuumed down and momentarily retained before exhalation. My innate tinnitus responded in proportion to the DMT molecules that found their way to the center of my brain. A curved psycho-spiritual plane exhibiting a cellular structure overarched me. 1 second later, more DMT molecules arrived at their destination because my psychic sound began amplifying significantly. The psycho-spiritual cells now transformed into a very definite, geometrically detailed presence. More DMT molecules must have arrived, further increasing the volume of my psychic sound. The geometrically composed psycho-spiritual substance suddenly projected upwards and outwards in a terrific and torrential stream. The sight of my own spiraling psycho-spiritual outpouring was simply a sight to behold." So, we have a documented and centuries-old initiation ritual describing the angelic apparition of a Freemasonic practitioner and the unsanctioned yet highly reliable first-hand recounts of amplifying one's conscious reality after introducing extraneous but identical alchemical elixirs beyond the brain-blood barrier. Once again, however, we witness the ever-present appearance of angels, and on a biblical scale too. The Bible, as we have already discovered, hides a plethora of hidden references to the functionality and biomechanics of the human brain. But it may also be hinting at a hidden or even rejected temple stone, which was used to construct the temple or house of God. I'd suggest that the self-evident stone that the builders rejected may indeed be yet another ancient and ingenious allegory for the stone of the wise. For the Bible states, Matthew 21:42, Jesus said to them, "Have you never read in the scriptures? The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. The Lord has done this, and it is marvelous in our eyes." Yet you cannot construct or build temples with this type of stone. However, this otherwise discarded building block, which could appear essential for said temple's foundation, could be the very cornerstone of the human experience, namely DMT. DMT, we find, is a fundamental building block in this thing we call life, and rather intriguingly, it is also found within the retinas of one's eyes. Permeating throughout the natural world and animal kingdom, DMT is a mere molecular tweak away from being described as tryptophan, an essential amino acid responsible for creating the neurotransmitter serotonin. And the profundity of nature's hidden agenda isn't strictly confined to the bounds of Masonic symbology and the Bible. On the contrary, the same harmonious hints arrive via the Quran also. Its pages decidedly dictate the spiritual potentiality of plant life itself. When discussing Harmala, which is typically identified as the burning bush of Moses' documented conversation with God, it states, "Every root, every leaf of Harmal is watched over by an angel who waits for a person to come in search of healing." Now, you can't help but wonder if these otherwise inexplicable occurrences are in any way linked to the quasi-physical experience of the OBE. It would appear that those who report back from such unexplained phenomena, such as out-of-body experiences, also recall the presence of well-informed entities and angels of light, our photons. So, what actually happens when the proverbial lights go out? Because there's more to the myth than meets the eye. Once again, I'm R.N. Vooght, author of DMT, Deities, Myth and Tryptamines, which is available via Amazon. I hope you liked the video, and thank you for liking and subscribing. That's the spirit.